In this video we look at ways of graphing equations. Now it is possible to graph equations using a graphing calculator, your TI-84. If you go to the y equals, enter the equation and then press graph, you'll get a graph by doing that. But if you are without your graphing calculator, often it's fairly easy to graph an equation. For example, this equation here, y equals 3x minus 2. All that is doing is telling you, if you're given an x coordinate, how to get the y coordinate. So for example, if you're given an x coordinate of -1, then you can very quickly figure out what the y coordinate is going to be, because you can put -1 in place of the x, so 3 times -1 is -3, minus 2 gives you -5. And in the same way, if you put 0 into this equation, 3 times 0 is 0, 0 minus 2, well, that should give you -2. And the same thing applies for the other numbers here. Now, so what? What this makes is the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate of a point. So you've got a point here. You've got the point -1, -5. You should try for yourself to graph those points on the coordinate grid underneath. So put those points on the coordinate grid that you should have down here, in this space down here, and then join up the points, and what you should have is a straight line. So pause the video now, plot those points, and then play the video again. Okay, I'm hoping that you've got something that looks like this. You'll notice that we've got some points on there. That we have the point 2, 4 right here. That's from these values here, 2, 4. We have the point 1, 1 right there from these two values. The point 3, 7 is right here, 3, 7, and so on. You should try to do the same thing, generating values that are going to go in this, for this function here. So you're going to take x equals -3, square it, and then subtract it from 4. Remember that the square of -3 is going to be +9. Okay, so fill in this table and then try to do a graph down here. And then play the video once more. Okay, so what we should have in here are these numbers, just from plugging in x equal to the number on the left, we get these values. And then when you graph it, you should have not a straight line this time, but what's known as a parabola. And we often get parabolas whenever we have things that involve an x squared term. And then in the final one, a different shape once more. You're going to take the absolute value of these values here. So the absolute value of -3 is +3. So over here we should have +3. And then we have +2, +1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now if we plot these points, the point -3, 3, -2, 2, and so on, what we should end up with is a graph that looks like this. And that's y equals the absolute value of x. Now on page 4, the last page, we're asked to find the x-intercepts and y-intercepts. That's where the x-intercept, for example, is where the graph crosses the x-axis. And you can see that right up here. The x-intercepts are where the graph might cross the x-axis. The y-intercept is where you cross the y-axis. Notice that on the y-axis, the x-coordinate is equal to 0. Any point on the y-axis, x is equal to 0. So this point certainly has x equal to 0. In the same way, on the x-axis, y is equal to 0. The y-coordinate here and the y-coordinate here will both be 0. So, if you want to find where the y-intercept of this graph here is, you've got to put x equal to 0. And that's very easy to do. Right? You put x equal to 0 into this, and what we should get when you do that is just y equals 5. Because 0 cubed is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, we just have 0 plus 5, that gives us 5. So the y-intercept would be at 0, 5. In this next example, example 5, if we want to find the x-intercept, we need to put y equal to 0. Right, so this y here has to be replaced with 0. So, if we do that, we put y equal to 0, and what happens is we get this equation. Instead of y equals x squared minus 8, we have 0 equals x squared minus 8. And then, if we try and solve that, it's fairly easy to do. We just take the negative 8 over to the other side and take the square root, and we get x equals either positive or negative the square root of 8. And if we simplify that radical, we get 2 root 2. So there are two x-intercepts, and you can actually see them here over on the right-hand side. We've got negative 2 root 2 here and positive 2 root 2. That's negative root 8 and positive root 8 are where that graph crosses the x-axis.